Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Centric. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are crime dramas. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about Death and Other Details, Season 1, Episode 6. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Okay, so first and foremost, we saw Imogen at the very beginning watching a video of kind of like, I think it was a story that we saw, or at least heard Rufus tell multiple times, but we see Imogen watching like it was from like 92, that when he got back that jewel that was stolen, and he's telling the story of how he accomplished it, and that was kind of her first introduction to Rufus. I don't know if that's something she looked up after he had already taken her mom's case. I would assume yes, because she didn't really, because when she first met him, it's like, oh, you are a detective, like she didn't know. So I'm assuming like after he took on the case and she became more enamored with him, she probably did a little homework, due diligence, to see like, oh, is this guy really the real deal? Turns like he is. Well, we'll put an asterisk beside that, but obviously we'll talk about the end of the episode when we get there. But obviously we circle back to like Trip and Anna present day, like obviously kind of both spiraling a little bit. Trip, everything business wise didn't work out for him. Anna's going through it because, well, not only did you cheat on your wife is wanting to divorce you, not even informed about the affair yet, and also the business deal, and basically you trying to be the CEO was kind of snatched away from you because your father took a deal with the Chuns, and not only did it like usurp you by doing that, he also made it so now the Chuns hold like 51% stake in the company. There's no way they put you as CEO, so there's nothing that's going to be like, everything that can go wrong went wrong, so they're both kind of karaokeing it, and I love that no one's stopping them. I mean, you're rich and powerful for like, so I'm sure like everyone on the ship is like, we're not going to mess with them, let them do what they want to, we're not about to get chastised for it. So, and I love that whole like, oh, you're kind of off, it's like, oh, you're a little pitchy. I even love when they like forgot the words to the song, but it was like a beautiful thing of them working together. In fact, I like that it feels like in that moment they had the first genuine sibling moment they've had probably in a very long time, because Trip is there with her and they're both kind of being vulnerable. She kind of opens up about everything, about, also like cheating on Layla with Eleanor, and even Trip being like, oh yeah, like, I've always liked your wife. It's like, yeah, but she doesn't like you. He's like, yes, she does. He's like, the fact is we're both outsiders. I mean, yes, we're both insiders, but he's just like, we see the world for what it is. It's a joke, but at the same time, the world is also dead serious. It's like, oh, that is kind of that interesting oxymoron. I mean, the world is just quite the conundrum wrapped in an enigma type of situation. It is. It is a giant contradiction in many different ways, but it's kind of like, yeah, some people just have that spark where they can see the bullshit that is the world, but also like that bullshit can be deathly serious at times too. So, but Anna's like, oh, do I have that spark? Did I? I think I had it at one point in time and I lost it, and it's like, can I get it back? And even Trip saying like, do you want your wife back? He's like, I can't give you any advice, but he's like, the best advice I can give you is just try. And then Anna like slowly but almost uncomfortably kind of lays her head on his shoulder, and almost Trip was almost like, oh, like they probably have very few genuine sweet sibling moments like that, and it was really sweet because it's like, it's not until they're kind of stripped bare of everything, of all the bullshit, that they kind of had a genuine sibling moment, because I'm sure with the way their lives are, they're so caught up in their own stuff that they never take time to like step back and just be. It's like the Collier name carries so much weight, and they're, heavy is the head that wears the crown type of situation. And I think now in this moment where they're both kind of knocked flat on their asses, is in this moment they can just be Trip and Anna without being Trip Collier and Anna Collier. So I just think that's so fascinating. I do think it's so interesting that Anna was debating whether or not she should tell Layla about the situation with Eleanor, but it's like, well, she's already divorcing you already, so would that make your chances of getting back together with her extremely unlikely? Yes, but do you still owe her the truth? Yes. So but that's kind of a moot point now, because I figured the moment Layla ended up opening stuff and she found like the pictures and stuff of Alexandra and Trip, I was like, oh my god, like because it's blackmail on everyone. So I was like, she's going to find out about Eleanor and Anna, which it's like, yep, she did. I even love she's like, yeah, that's the bra I got her. I bought her, and I love that Teddy was like, okay, maybe you should like figure some stuff out. Like, I won't tell anyone that rather than gathering evidence, you were too busy down here watching your wife's sex tape with her ex. It's like, yeah, she didn't really dive into as deeply into stuff as she should have, because I mean, the moment she came across that, but I mean, once again, it showcases that Victor Sands has got dirt on every single person on his boat, because now it makes you wonder, like, well, what other dirt, like, that's the interesting thing about this story, because this episode in particular leans into the whole aspect of an unreliable narrator, because even I want to say it was last episode that Rufus was like, I'm sorry, reader, I've lied to you before, or so on and so forth, right? So it is kind of that thing, and which comes up this episode too. We'll get to that, but it is this larger conversation of like, that's the problem with a story being told from a very specific person's view, because when it's told from that perspective, they could easily shift things to make themselves look better than what they really are, which obviously once again flows more into Rufus's sides of things. But yeah, so it makes you wonder what other dirt could there be about Rufus that maybe existed on those files that Layla never got an opportunity to check out. Unraveling certain truths, when Winnie finds out the truth about Danny this episode, because she's trying to recruit Jules, which he's like, no, I'm not about to be a part of all of that, because she's like, yeah, we're going to take down the rich and powerful, and he was like, yeah, like you killed Rufus's assistant. She's like, wait, what are you talking about? I was like, yeah, Keith Trubisky doesn't exist. That guy was Rufus's accomplice and friend, and it's like, in that moment you saw it struck her, because she thought like, so it goes back to my bigger question back in episode 1 was, when the person who killed Danny, did they kill him because they knew he was Danny Rufus's accomplice, or was it because he's Keith? Her assumption was because, oh, he's Keith, he's a rich asshole. It wasn't just because he's mean to me. She was given the orders to kill him, which that ended up being a surprise to me, because I thought, like, I was so certain, like, she didn't actually kill Keith. She happened to be in the room when someone else did it. But it's like, no, she in fact actually did it. But this is about unraveling, so we really did solve the murder. It really was her, but she's not where the buck stopped. Obviously, she's just a soldier in the army that is Victor Sands. So it's like, obviously you got to find the head of the serpent and cut it off, because I was just thinking, like, I just never thought she actually did do it, but obviously she didn't just do one, she got two, as we find out this episode, but we'll get to that in a second. But what's really getting to her finally is knowing that she killed she wants to justify it and make it seem like she's A-okay, but even Teddy's like, look at your nails, look at the way you haven't eaten. Like, the fact of the matter is, you are a lot more broken up about this than you're willing to admit. Because even Rufus said, if you're going to work for a psychopath and do it happily, it helps to be a psychopath yourself. But we see that Winnie believes in the cause, sure, but she still has enough of a conscience left for it to eat away at her, especially knowing, like, wait, he wasn't some rich douchebag, he was with you, he was under, like, that's where it's like, in her mind, it's like, him being some rich entitled asshole, it just puts him on the fuck you list, regardless. But now it's like, wait, he wasn't who I thought he was. But she's still going to justify it, but like, I don't know why Victor Sands wanted him dead, but he had to have a reason. And even her other murder this episode, which ended up being Alexandra, she doesn't know the reason why they were removed from the board. It's like, and even Teddy's like, wait, you killed people not even knowing why you were supposed to kill them. You just did it because you were given orders. But we find out why, because from her perspective, Victor is kind of like this avenging angel, because she tells this story of a friend that got knocked up by a not so good dude, and to kind of pay for it, she worked in like a rubber factory or something like that, and the toxins from it eventually caused her baby to be born like 3 months early, and it died after 6 days. And this friend blamed herself and ended up killing herself in the process. and Victor ended up coming back and destroying that place. So he's coming off as like this guardian angel of like, oh yeah, I'm this avenging angel. But it's like, if he's taking down bad people, well, why did he kill my mom? It's like, well, we know he killed potentially. We don't know what we know until it all gets revealed. But from what it seems like, you'd assume he killed Danny because Danny stumbled across something. But even not Victor, Rufus had asked a question. This is his high-scale operation that he didn't want exposed. Why go through the trouble of killing Danny then? Because it puts everything in danger because you're having authorities riddled all over your boat. Granted, we find out Sunil, which we'll get to in a sec, is his eyes and ears during this investigation. So, but it's still like a thing of, it's kind of, why go through such lengths to go ahead and kill Danny now, you know? I guess it's different when you have the whole Alexandra situation because that's been in motion for a little while, but I don't know how long it's been since Danny's murder. It's been probably like a couple days, so Alexandra's like prolonged murder was like probably set up after the fact, so it's like, that's what I think is interesting. Not unless we find out someone else had Victor, not unless someone else pretending to be Victor had Danny killed, and that wasn't on Victor's orders, but maybe Alexandra's death actually was. It's probably unlikely, but it's a possibility, so I'm kind of throwing that out there. But since I brought up Sunil, let's circle over to him really quickly. I was giving him so many benefits of the doubt last episode. I was like, they had this part of the boat's construction. He probably didn't know it, but that was me being stupid because, like, of course, he's someone that pays attention to so many details. He oversaw so much of this boat's construction. To be fair, he even admits he didn't know about, like, the server room, which that's the word I couldn't think of last episode. It's 2 words, server room. Like, I couldn't think of server room last episode. I was like, I couldn't remember that word. But yeah, the server rooms, and it's not just that one in that hallway they found last episode. From like C all the way to F, there are server rooms like hidden in the walls like that. So either way, it's like, it makes sense Sunil would know about it, but he doesn't know the full scale of the operation. He only got in bed with Victor Sands like 5 or 6 years ago, and it turns out the guy that was following them last episode is the guy he met with. So that's kind of interesting. No wonder Sunil probably immediately recognized him and was like, let's go. I knew something was up because the guy almost had like a smile on his face. Like, what was that about? It's like, okay, so he's probably going to like say, oh, here's Sunil playing a role of chivalrous person. Like, let's get away from this guy. But it's like, yeah, it doesn't matter where you go because you'll eventually have to fill us in on because he tried to not talk to the guy. Like, after he found out about Victor's connection to Imogen of like, oh, this is the guy that killed your mom, he cut off like helping them. But it's like, you up to a certain point were feeding Victor information about the investigation. It is a situation, once again, everyone's got their secrets, but also like, you just don't know who you can fully trust because it makes you almost go like, I mean, there's a part of me that's like already kind of feeling like, are we going to get a reveal about Rufus? But I'm like, well, him trying to explain everything to Imogen next episode, we'll have to wait to see what that all entails. But that seems like that probably takes him off potentially the suspect list. But it seems like he's a con artist, which we'll get to later. But then I also start thinking, well, about Hilde. Like, that's the perfect part of any criminal thing is having someone be a part of the investigation. She's always been quick to be like, yeah, let's like see this as it is, the meats and potatoes of it, and let's not like look too deeply. Like, once again, sometimes the simplest answer is the answer. That's just her. I mean, she's even like, yeah, it's Sunday, we can do this on Monday. It's like, fine, let me like question you here once again. Let me stress that it's a Sunday I'm having to work on. But it probably won't be, but not unless there are future investigators that end up on the ship who end up working for Victor. So it's like, you have no idea how far his reach is and how many people he obviously, we got everyone on the ship he's got blackmail on, so he could pull those strings at any point in time. How many people were already being blackmailed by him before we even started the show? So stuff like that, like how many pieces on the chessboard are ready to be, are already being primed to be used, and how many have already been set in motion, how many have been activated rather. But yeah, circling to Alexandra, I figured something was up with her because like she kept being like sick, and I was like, because I brought it up last episode. I was like, oh, I thought she was gonna drop dead when she was talking to Lewin. I thought like the lawyer dude, like when she was talking to him and she looked kind of rough. I was like, is she about to die or something? But she didn't. I was like, oh, maybe she's just sick. I figured someone had to be tampering with like the IVs or something. But this episode I even started thinking like, well, we know she does drugs, but it's like she sniffs coke. It doesn't seem like she injects it to what we know. It's like, yeah, it seems like her and Trip are more into like sniffing coke rather than like inject. Well, I'm thinking no, I'm not even because I'm thinking of heroin. I'm not thinking of coke. I think I'm thinking of heroin. It just shows you how much of an amateur I am with drugs. Yeah, because coke is the one you sniff. Heroin's the one that you typically. Well, you can. God, I'm about to go into a whole lane about like the different ways of ingesting drugs. It's like it's not important. I thought like the thing on her arm was kind of a byproduct of like injections, and I was like, oh, what her drugs were tampered with, which I was like, well, her and Trip have done the same drugs, so that would be kind of a complicated concern of spiking her drugs without spiking his, not unless they were. But I'm like, you're not going to remove him from the board because you need the Colliers in play, and killing one of them is going to complicate things. So it's like, yeah, it makes sense. She was killed through her IV, which Winnie's the one that kept administering it to her. So it's sad too because she was ready to like drop the ball on Lawrence Collier, but what she brought to Hilde was a blank binder. I was like, wow, they got you. Not only did they kill you, to be fair, you've been dead for as Rufus puts it, you've been dead for 3 days, you just didn't know it. Which it makes me think about The Crow. Because there was that line from The Crow, which is like, they're all dead, they just don't know it yet. I was like, oh, that's such a good line. God, I need to watch that movie again. Because it was recently Brandon Lee's birthday. A couple days ago, I remember seeing a post about it. I have not seen that movie in so long. I need to rewatch it. I gotta look and see when the remake is supposed to come out because that movie's done. I just don't know when they're planning on releasing it. Tangents and all that aside, just like I said, that line in particular just made me think of that. But yeah, poor Alexandra, and Trip was really upset about that because he legitimately liked her. I think she liked him too, but I don't think the feelings were fully mutual. I think he felt a lot stronger about her because maybe he felt like there was a deeper connection of like, oh, me and Layla are outsiders. Maybe he thinks, even though she's kind of an insider herself, that maybe Alexandra was kind of an outsider herself. Like she was trying so hard to prove herself, and Trip himself. Like I think I think he saw a lot of himself in Alexandra, and I think it's kind of a bummer. He ends up attacking the lawyer, who he's been a hot mess this episode because Hilde like poured some alcohol on his chest and then lit his chest on fire. It's like, Jesus. It's like, you are pretty hardcore. Are you only doing that because that lawyer is him? Like, do you look down upon him because he's a lawyer and lawyers are scummy and sucky? Is that why that was about? Or is that just your kink? It felt like that was like pointed directly, specifically at him for being him. But yeah, like the guy's a mess, and Anna tried to be like, "Oh, I'm sorry, my brother attacked you. He shouldn't have said what he said." But Llewellyn was like, "No, he was right," which I was like, interesting, because Alexandra did confront him last episode, like, "Oh," thinking that the Colliers were the ones that sent the blackmail, but he knows, like, right, it's Victor Sands, and he probably not probably, he definitely knows what this family's mixed up in. You're the lawyer, of course you know a lot of dirt on the family. Even saw Preacher Dude being kind of upset because he wasn't expecting the deal to go as sideways as it did. Because he probably thought, like, whatever dirt I give you on the Colliers, it's not going to be enough. Or maybe he wasn't expecting the deal to go as one-sided as it is. I guess he wasn't expecting Lawrence to kind of take the deal lying down. It's like, well, he kind of needs it because the family is in such dire straits that either he's trying to pawn whatever BS they're involved in off on the Chuns because they probably don't know about Victor Sands, but it's like, oh, if we give your business to Victor Sands, oh, I'll accept the deal because now Victor becomes your issue and not ours. But it's like, well, your family business might be the only thing keeping you safe. So you trying to pawn it off on someone else could end up getting rid of the one thing that's kind of acting as a bit of an insurance policy, keeping you alive, your worthfulness. So the moment you're no longer useful to him, he's going to wipe you off the board. So I don't know if that's part of why Lawrence did what he did, like jumping and at the chance to sign off on the deal he made with the Chuns or not. I don't know what was fully in Lawrence's mind at the time. So circling back to Alexandria really quickly, because I wanted to make this point, but I kind of forgot to bring it up, was it makes perfect sense that they would, like, she brought the binder out, and last episode we found out, like, obviously Layla found the secret camera that was in the room, so it's like, right, they got all this blackmail material, so there's plenty of photos, so they probably saw when she took the binder, because she looked at it last episode, so the moment she brought it out, they're like, okay, cool, let's strike now. They were probably waiting for her to reveal where it was, because she probably hadn't looked at it the entire time she's been on a boat. So luckily, like I say, if she dies before we find it, it's fine. She probably doesn't have anything set in motion that would, well, because I think she looked, I'm trying to remember, did she actually look through the binder last episode? I think she didn't she? Not unless she just grabbed the binder and saw it, but I don't actually, I could have sworn she looked through it, but maybe she didn't. So who knows how long ago it was swapped, but I feel like I'm like 70% sure she flipped through it last episode, so it had to be in between last episode and this episode, like probably in the time frame of a couple hours that someone went in there and swapped them out. The point I was about to make, though, is like they were probably thinking like, well, even if she doesn't pull out the binder, it'll die because she won't have any contingency set in place to, give that information to anybody. So after she's dead, we can probably thoroughly search the place or something like that. At the very least, it'll die with her because she's going to die eventually anyway. Or maybe they just planned on knowing, like, right, push comes to shove, she will eventually reveal it, so they knew it was only a matter of time and they lucked out, or I don't know. Ines got back to Sunil, or rather Imogen and them, about the Capsium Blue note and the shipping report or whatever, and it turns out that it's from 2005, and Imogen confronts Anna about it. It's like, this thing was poisoning and killing people, and she's the one that found out about it. She was like, I found out about it, and I rebuilt the place from the ground up. But for Imogen, it's like, that doesn't change. You didn't fix anything. You covered it up. You buried all that stuff. Like, how many people died and stuff like that? Like, because she's saying, like, right, because of that, your family's being blackmailed. It's like, no, it turns out that's what jump-started all of this. It wasn't Lawrence's issue. Maybe it was Lawrence covering for Anna's issue, but it seems like it started with her. Well, it was kind of already a Lawrence issue, but, which is interesting because, like, considering that Victor probably was going to come after the Colliers regardless, but maybe Anna got to it first, or maybe he was like, oh, let me kind of basically sit back and let you destroy yourselves, and then I swoop in and end up kind of using you to my advantage. Because he's trying to be like, oh, let's take down the rich, I'm the good guy in this situation, but seem like, that's any villain, a good villain for you. A good villain believes himself to be the hero. They're not evil for evil's sake. They feel like there is a purpose to their ruthlessness that sometimes the world needs it. Like, just like Winnie said, I don't know why Danny had to die, or even why Alexandra had to die, but Victor must have his reasons because he's kind of a champion of good. So whatever reason he had, it had to be a good reason. It had to be for a larger play, that this is about rooting out all the corruption in the world, Do a little bad for the greater good type of situation. That's how Winnie views Victor, and maybe Victor views himself that way, or maybe they recognize, like, no, I'm a piece of shit villain, I'm just going to pretend like I'm a hero to others. Like, any cult leader, it can be charismatic to make you believe whatever bullshit they want to spew, especially when you're hurt and you're vulnerable. And as I talked about earlier with Winnie's story, he came into her life being like getting revenge for her and showing her like, oh, like, see, we can do so much together, that she bought in on his BS. Like I said, maybe he truly believes it, or maybe it is all a farce. It's like, what I mean by that is, going back to what I was saying, that at the end of the day, maybe it's like, oh, I'm putting up this front, but I recognize it's BS. Or is it a situation of he smells his own fart so much that he's like, oh, I truly do believe I'm a hero. But either way, my point being, circling back, is just Anna's mishap of building a place from the ground up is what sunk their family company, and she's been doing everything she can to kind of repair all that. So that's why I'm like, is this really, it's her mess up? But I think she was, as she had implied, like, this started because she was cleaning up her dad's mess up. So it's like, yeah, the chicken or the egg situation. Like, she's the one that kind of put the family in a complicated position it's in because her dad like did all that trying to cheap out on labor and it led to death and stuff like that. So they keep calling up a Steve who's the one that's in charge of all the money and stuff, which I'm wondering is Steve actually Victor, because that's who Trip was supposed to call last episode to try and get that $1 million from the trust fund. But and that's also who Anna was calling about all of this. So I'm like, who's this mysterious Steve? Is Steve just gonna stay mysterious, or just the fact is Steve's in charge of the money could just be like this off-screen character that's not relevant, or it could just be like that's a secret role that's going to be revealed of like, oh, Steve holds a lot of significance. We'll have to wait and see. But the sad thing is, like, it led to a blow up between Imogen and Anna, like this whole back and forth of you did what you did, and it's just Imogen calling them out for being criminals, and it's like, right, you've been stealing from the family. Like, oh yeah, I knew about it, but I let it go. But she's like, yeah, there you, but that's who you are, aren't you, Anna? You are someone who holds on to something. You were just waiting for the opportunity. You always had that card in your back pocket ready to play it. But she's like, no, I'm a friend. I was going to let it go, but you're the one that can't let it go. I'm sorry what happened to you, like your mom's death and everything, but you are someone that can't move on. But she's like, yes, because my trauma is, at least it's mine. What do? You're carrying around your family name. It's like that family name took care of you when you had no one and nothing. And it's just like, I never asked you to do it. It's like, we took care of you. We gave you a life, you ungrateful cunt. And that sealed the deal. And in that moment, Anna has officially lost everything. Your wife is leaving you, and now she's doubly leaving you because she knows you cheated on her. The business deal went sideways, so not only are you not getting the CEO ship that you were hoping to, you're also losing a good chunk of your family business. Your family's about to go down the toilet. You found out your mom's having an affair, and that's going to blow up your family even more. Who knows if your dad knows about it, and even if he does he care? That's a whole thing. And now on top of that, you lost the only like person that's like a sister to you, who's like was your best friend. So in this moment, Anna's extremely, extremely alone. So then in that moment, like all the power goes out on the ship, which the way it all went out made me go like, was that an EMP? That felt like an EMP went off or something like that. I was like, I'm trying to think to myself, I was like, would an EMP affect backup generators? I guess it depends on if they're connected to like a grid or are they like gas powered or something. Like maybe that will change the outcome of like whether or not an EMP would work on backup generators. Like I guess it just depends on what type they are. But yeah, we also had Lewin, the lawyer, throw himself overboard. Granted, when you play back that scene, if you listen, you hear an electrical sound. So it doesn't sound like he just flung himself off. It sounded like he got electrocuted, and it almost makes you go, was he dead before he hit the water? Like, did it shock him and kill him? Or did it just shock him in that moment, and now he's kind of like paralyzed as he drowns in the ocean? But he calls out Rufus saying like, right, your greatest detective, the answer was right in front of you. Because the moment he came out and talked to the moment Rufus came out after Imogen told him like, yeah, Anna told me the truth about Capsule Blue, he just seemed a little off. He's like, yeah, oh, this is obviously all connected, we'll figure this out. He just seemed like, it felt like in that moment he was hiding something, and I'm just not sure what. But then we find out later on when Lewin called him out, like, hey, like you're BS, you're a hack. You didn't even see what was right in front of you. Where's World's Greatest Detective, my ass? And he ends up telling the fact is that he loved Imogen's mom, which I'm like, is he gonna be? Are we gonna find out he's Imogen's dad or something? It's like, no. So what was going on there? And when we get revealed from Rufus at the end, oh, I'm a con artist. I lied. I'm not the world's greatest detective. We find out how he got the jewel, and he just came up with this elaborate story, and he just kept going along. And he said he could basically he faked it till he made it until he got to Imogen's mom's case, and it's just he couldn't fake it any longer. So now it's like, okay, so he's a fraud. Now it's like, let's find out everything from back then, because whatever it was that you missed back then, Llewyn was kind of like, yo, you missed something so important. It was right in front of you. So let's go over every detail of that case, what you did, how you handled it all 18 years ago, and I'm going to be the one to figure out what you missed back then. And he's like, oh, you're not going to like me for when it's all said and done. And she's like, yeah, I'll live. She didn't like you for a good chunk of time regardless. Got a lot of trauma associated with you, obviously. But Rufus's reveal makes you go like, well, if that's about that, okay, so if that's Rufus, what does that say about Danny? Did he con Danny as well, or did Danny know who he was, and did he kind of compensate? Like, was he the real detective, and just Rufus got all the accolades from it? Maybe the picture Rufus painted of Danny wasn't the full picture. I doubt it was, but it's like, yeah, they were friends for like 20 years. Was he faking it as well? Like, I don't know. It makes you, how... Well, because that was obviously over 20 years ago, so I'm assuming Danny probably didn't know Rufus was full of shit, because he was like, right, they've known each other, they've been friends for like 20 years, so, and that 92 interview predates that. Because Danny and him didn't become friends until like 2 years before Imogen's mom's case, so there's plenty of span of time for you to go like, okay, so... Because I think it's supposed to be like present day. It's like 2022 or 2023, like in a time frame of the show, present day at the very least. So I'm kind of leaning towards, I don't think Danny saw him for who he really was, which is interesting because Danny had made that point to in the flashback. He made that point to Layla that not many people saw through him for who he really was. Was that, he was usually able to keep his cover. So it's ironic that he couldn't see Rufus for who he was, or maybe he did and he was fine with it. But it's like, right, you're going to continue selling this lie because at the very least you owe it to Imogen to keep up this front. Because something got revealed in that case that made him not only walk away, but that's where his career started taking a dive, because I guess he just stopped playing the role anymore. I think he just couldn't because of the real failure of, like, I think up until that point, solving whatever crime BS way he had to go about it, it was fine until shit got real and a little girl put her trust and faith in you. Once again, she's got a lot of trauma associated with Rufus up and bailing on her when she had hope in her heart for the first time after losing her mom. So some very, very interesting developments. I'm curious to ultimately see where all of this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.